Hello, and there's no microphone, so I might have to shout. And I've got a cold, so you'll all be infected by the end of the night. I'm TV's Kevin Poulter, and also known for the Legal Cheek podcast, which I'm sure you're all regular listeners of, or to. And this is really the second Legal Cheek event ever. And really 1 year on from the first one. And now, if was anyone here at the last event last year? Okay. They missed out on the hot ticket. They missed out on the hot ticket, but good that you've got a place today. So for the last event, there were 5 weeks running up to the event where they tried to promote it, and we did that through Legal Cheek. And one of the things that we just promoted was the "if I knew now what I know," if I knew what I know now, I should get it right, column that was used to get people along, and it has 5 really impressive names. And I'm pleased to say that a year on, the column's still going, and we're not quite scraping the barrel yet, in the sense that they've not asked me to do one. But these guys have been dispensing great advice to you guys, looking for careers in the law, looking to stand out from the rest, and looking to perhaps, in some ways, not entirely, but some ways emulate what these people here have achieved. So I'm going to introduce them to a certain extent. So I've got an extra interloper in the panel as well, who's forced his way in. But I'll start at this end, and we have, and I'm sure it's familiar to a lot of you, Mark Lewis, partner at Taylor Hampton, and he is a specialist, and correct me if I'm wrong, in libel, privacy, confidentiality and intellectual property, and in particular known for his phone hacking litigation, acting for the good boys or the bad boys. Good boys, that way, of course.
The good boys and girls.
Of course. And next to him we have PJ Kirby, QC, barrister specialising in commercial costs and employment law at Hardwick Building. He's Make Your Own Decisions, a Chelsea fan, foodie, a cheese, and I understand from this week a Proclaimers fan.
Oh yeah, yeah, I am. Big Proclaimers, and it's a good film. I mean, it's not intellectually challenging, but it's a good film.
You mentioned DJ.
I'm a DJ. Yeah, I only do wedding anniversaries now. I've moved on to silver weddings rather than that.
Next to him is a new addition, a late addition, Ops Director at Riverview Law, and is Jeremy Hopkins. All these people are followable on Twitter, I should add as well, and you can find them as we go through. It says current wine drinker, but I can't see what he's drinking. But there we go. Next to him is Nicky Richmond. She's managing partner of leading specialist property law firm. Is now with Brescia or Brecca?
Breacher.
Breacher. Thank you. And previously, partner at K&L Gates. Woo. She's a big foodie, and she's amongst her skills is fluency in sarcasm. So we'll see if that comes out today. Who's next? Next to her, it's going to take most of the time up, is Matthew Ryder, QC, another barrister at Matrix Chambers, specialising in complex crime and civil law, judicial review, police law, and claims under the Human Rights Act. Next up, Sean Jones, employment law at 11 King's Bench Walk, and I believe ran the London Marathon.
Yes.
Not recently, but yes. You're still running it. And finally, right at the far end, Nigel Hewitson, partner and head of planning at Norton Rose, a self-proclaimed planerac, which I quite like that, Monty Python and prog rock fan. So we'll see how that goes as we go through. Now, does anybody want to start us off with a general question for the panel? And if nobody wants to speak out loud, then by all means tweet me at Kevin Poulter and anonymously read out your question. Nobody, come on, thank you.
A lot of these people here are either starting the law or soon to be starting the law. What do you think skills they need to possess that you didn't have when you started in the law?
Oh, who wants to go first? Go on, we'll start at the far end. There's no time to think about it.
skills that I didn't have when I started out. I think, well, I suppose the first is the rather unnatural skill of coming into a room like this full of strangers and being able to strike up a conversation. I think when I started out on this road, I was probably quite painfully shy, so that's one thing that will be quite useful to you. I suppose the other is you need to be quite robust. You will meet a lot of very unreasonable people, most of whom will be your partners.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. Firstly, inability to manage entirely without sleep. That becomes a matter of near history for you. And also, a kind of cross between daring and confidence. That makes it sound much sexier and more romantic than it actually is. But you remember when you were at school, you always had someone telling you that you're right or wrong, and there's a tick or a cross. And then at A level, your teachers impertinently start saying, try thinking for yourself around this difficult question. So you find some ideas in a book and copy those down. They tick those and say, well done for independent thought. And then that develops at university, and people are possibly obsessive about you coming up with your own ideas. Again, it can be hard to find something original to say. As soon as you flop into the law, people are asking you questions to which there are no actual right answers. And you're having to take a bet on yourself and say, I think this is the right answer, and I think I can make it the right answer. So particularly in litigation, it's your job to be something of a bookie. You say, I think your chances are 50, 60%, never go higher than that. That's my first tip. But then you have to kind of ride the horse too and make it happen. And that's more scary than you think it's going to be. So a certain amount of confidence, or I suppose lack of common sense, is probably another way of it.
I had all the qualities already, including modesty. No, I think patience. I think a lot of the time when you start out, you don't feel patient. You don't feel patient in terms of arguments that you're making. You don't feel confident that if you just kind of put your arguments plainly, they're likely to be probably more effective if you put them in a kind of dressed up way. And so patience and confidence, the confidence that eventually, if you keep going on the path that you think is the right path, by and large you'll get there, provided you kind of keep on it. So patience and confidence are things that I think are things that you lack when you start out. And then, there are other qualities that you need, but those are the ones that you don't really have enough of at the beginning, and you develop as it goes on.
Just picking from that point, this is talking about the subtleties of presenting an argument. So I don't know, these people look a bit young perhaps to know about Ally McBeal. But there was one of the lawyers on McBeal that used various tricks in the courtroom, quite famously, and obviously not to such an extreme lengths, but do you find still that barristers are using tricks to try and get across a point or to win an argument, when really it's not necessary?
Yeah, no, definitely. You can recognise kind of hack tricks that people picked up a certain turn of phrase or way of asking a question, and they think this is going to work. I mean, for me, firstly, I think if you're running the same lines in when you do a speech to a jury or submission to a judge, if you're running the same kind of thing, it starts to bore you. Once it's boring you, then it's going to bore everybody else around, even if they haven't heard it before. And I think the main thing I would say really is without going on too long about it, the kind of way we conceptualise kind of what it is to be an advocate, by and large, is a bit wrong. So there are two kind of main ways when you start out you think that advocate's supposed to be. The first one is this kind of sports analogy that, it's like a competitive sport, and you kind of go in there and you beat your opponent, and it's like a fun. I think that's a really dangerous and unhelpful way to look at going into court and presenting an argument. It's you versus the other person. You're going to start to fall flat. And the other paradigm we kind of tend to use is the actor, the performer. I think that's really dangerous as well, because you start to think of yourself as being the person in the spotlight who's got to have the attention on you, who's got to do something exciting and interesting. And in reality, you're much better off thinking that, how do I present this in a way that puts me in the background and puts my arguments at centre stage and makes me fade away a bit. And the main reason for that is that if you're an actor, people go to see you, but if you're a barrister, people find you a bit annoying, and they're there to hear your argument. And you've got to kind of really get. Whereas the way it tends to be presented, the way your supervisor will talk to you, the way other barristers will talk to you about kind of beat the opponent in the sports analogy or the performance analogy, they can really steer in the wrong direction.
Well, I can't really compete with the glamour of the courtroom because I'm in private practice and I'm the token woman on the panel, as you might know. So I'm probably going to speak about women. There you go. What
So isn't you here, so...
I know I don't stack up otherwise, I know that. Well, actually, the confidence thing is very interesting. Everybody's used the confidence word, and actually, my observation from working with male and female lawyers over many, many years is that women undersell themselves and men often oversell themselves. And I would also say that in an interview situation, be honest to the person that's interviewing you and be honest to yourself. Do not read about the firm and just spurt back what you've seen on the website to the people who are interviewing you, because if you think that's what they want to hear, they're never going to do that. Be honest about why you're there. And if it's not working, have the confidence actually to say, actually this isn't really for me and this isn't the right place for me. Don't try and talk yourself into something. Your gut feeling will tell you where you should be. And if it's not right, it's not right. I mean, it's so hard that everybody tries to just do the right thing and say the right thing just to get that job. But it won't last. If it's not the right place for you, you're just not going to actually have a long-term career there. And actually, the other thing that I would say is, try a paralegal position. And not that you've got much choice at the moment, but do try that paralegal position before you apply for a training contract. We've taken on 9 out of 10 people that have tried a paralegal position before a training contract, because once they've got in there, they see what you're like, you see what they're like, and it's a really easy way for a law firm to take you on. So think about that as a career option rather than just thinking, I must get a training contract. It's not the be-all and end-all.
Well, if I look back at the skills that I didn't have when I started in this business, I still don't have them. But what I have done, I've spent a lot of time, more years than I care to admit on camera, working with lawyers from a young age and seeing them develop, particularly at the bar. And I guess the skill that I've often seen go missing is listening and understanding what you're actually doing. You're serving a client, you're serving a business or a person or an individual. And I think during the course of the whole process of education, understandably too, it requires a lot of talent, a lot of skill, a lot of effort, a lot of expense. So I can understand there's real value to that. But actually the value as you perceive it, it's not always the value that the recipient of your advice or your services is going to see. So I think there's there's a real tendency, and I guess I see it in the profession now, less so thankfully, to broadcast what you've got and the skills you've learned to others, rather than actually listen to what their requirements are and apply that knowledge from their perspective. And I think that's absolutely key for the future. And I even see now when you try to promote our services in that way, and when you talk to businesses who are used to receiving services and say that's how we try and do things, they go, wow. Well, to me, shouldn't that be normal? So there's a real gap there in terms of what the legal services market has been providing, an opportunity to fill it if you understand that from the start.
I'm one of those particularly annoying people because there is no way in the world I would get a pupillage with my academic record. As if you saw if I knew then, 2-2 from Hull isn't exactly going to put you very high up on the list of desired candidates. I mean that is so unfair for you guys, and I have personal experience at the moment about how unfair it is, because I've got a daughter who cannot get a training contract, so I don't think that you need to know people in order to get one, because I can't get one. That's the amount of bribes I put out there. Yeah, it is, and her academics are 10 times better than mine, so it's going back to the actual question. I mean, what I didn't have then I still haven't got, because I still obviously haven't upgraded my degree and haven't falsified it either.
Still time.
But in terms of, in a sense, what I've learned, I think there are 2 things. One, obviously, you're never going to have when you start, and that's experience. And you do continue to learn. The other thing is, and bizarrely, I found this in comparison to when I started at the bar, I prepare far more now than I used to the extent I now write out questions in cross-examination. I never did that when I started off at the bar. Fortunately, I saw Sean nod, so maybe he does it as well.
Yeah, well, I do it because I'm frightened I'm going to have a stroke in the middle. They're on the paper, but that's okay.
So, yeah, the more experience you get, in fact, you realise that there's
the less you know.
Yeah, the less you know, and secondly, nothing beats proper preparation. So that's it for me.
The first thing that you should learn, it seems to me, is never be the last person to answer a question. Because you can be playing bingo here and crossing all the answers off. The second thing is that you need to learn is that your answer is always right. So what you have and what you want to argue for is what you can achieve with anything. And you've got to be prepared to listen to people, but they're not necessarily right because they're older than you, that they've been doing this longer. Because if you listen to those opinions, then you might as well have computers doing the jobs.
Okay, first of all, it's time for a commercial break. Thank you to our sponsors, LexisNexis, who have said that not only have they provided the food, they've also provided, not fortune cookies, future cookies, which will be available at the end of the evening, over there somewhere. And one of these cookies contains a winning ticket. It's a trading contract. No, it's actually an iPad mini, which is very generous of them. Hurrah! And they collect those after the event, crack them open, see if you have indeed won an iPad mini, and they'll ship it to you at some later stage, no doubt. So before we think about questions, but I'm going to take one that was sent in to us in advance from Lisa Burton. And she said, she's here. She can ask herself.
She can ask herself. She's here.
She really wants to.
You can remember
My
it.
question.
Yeah.
I can't remember it. I
Do you want me to read it to you?
Thank you. I didn't read anything down.
As a career changer, can the panel offer any advice on negotiating application forms and procedures clearly aimed at university students? For example, one of the questions you possibly had is, if you could be a character from a novel, who would you be?
No, but read the other one.
I've not got another one.
No, you didn't take that. The other one said, the other one was describe yourself in 3 words. And my colleague said, just put not very impressed.
Maybe not easily impressed would be better. So.
No. Yes, right.
Well, we can go for a 3-word answer if you like from each of them. I will, given the answer to Mark's last question, we'll start with you.
And this has to be 3 words.
3 words. So, advice for a career changer, filling out application forms.
Go for it.
3 words.
3 words.
Line.
Can I be more than 3 words?
More than 3 words.
I actually think, funny enough, we were talking about this coming over here. I think actually for the bar, I don't know about solicitors, I actually think coming from a career change is actually an advantage because you come with commercial insight. I mean, whatever you've done previously, you've got some insight into the world. Personally, I think if you've gone straight from school, uni, law college, I mean, you often haven't really seen the world. I mean, my pupil who's just been taken on in Chambers is, I shouldn't say how old she is, but she was a journalist. She was a royal correspondent of the Evening Standard. And so she's someone, therefore she's more confident in dealing with solicitors, with clients. She's just seen the world. So, forget about the form. I mean, there must be some bits on it where you can make clear that why you're better because you have seen more of the world and I don't know how much of the world you've seen, but you must have seen more of the world and got more experience commercially.
Can I echo that from the solicitor's side of the profession? At my firm, we're as interested in what you've done outside of your studies, be that in terms of having a previous career or maybe done some interesting extracurricular stuff while you're at university. We're as interested in that as we are in your academics. I think for the first time this year, I was looking at the stats the other day, we've actually recruited as trainees more non-law graduates than law graduates. And I think partly because they tend to have done something else first. And my experience is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a non-law graduate, but I hadn't, as anybody that's read my piece in Legal Chief will know, I started out doing something else and almost became a lawyer by accident. And I'm not saying that makes me a better lawyer, but I think my experience is that it often makes others better lawyers.
I want to make two points, if I may, on this. The first is, I'm sure anyone in the chambers who's been a pupil master will recognise that they have allowed to slip out of their grasp ultimately very talented individuals who have come through school and university and bar school and into practice so quickly that they haven't quite matured enough to persuade the chambers to take them on. So the bar is littered with people I wish we'd kept, who have gone off to do fantastically well, but just needed an extra period of time to live a little, acquire a degree of maturity and a difference of perspective. People who come via a career change have that in spades. They have the most extraordinary amount of experience to offer. The second point is, just to echo the point about advantage, I used to help do university entrance interviews, and they are, imagine putting yourself into that position, it's the single most tedious thing you can possibly do. Because everyone's so young, they haven't done anything to differentiate themselves from anyone else. So you sit there and say, oh, editor of the school magazine, excellent. That's fantastic. In the debating society, how unusual. So, although it is better by the time people are applying for solicitors firms and chambers, that's still the key challenge. It's just being different in an interesting way to all the other people who are turning up with grades comparable to yours and backgrounds comparable to yours. So to be able to say, look, I've done this, with that, I've had experience of other sectors, nothing else just engages the interest of the interviewers. And I see it as a real advantage. I'd be wanting to make as much of that on the form as I could.
I agree. A lot.
Well, the batting order's got all messed up, so I'll continue to mess it up. All I would add to that, one, there's a bit of a fail in the whole legal profession in terms of being able to recruit, that people are expecting, and people recruit on the basis of this sort of identikit template career that you must follow. So you get questions like that suggest a real lack of imagination and actually a lack of recruitment expertise within that organisation. But there we are, lawyers doing recruitment, which they're supposed to be lawyers. Luckily, I think modern firms are now getting a bit more recruitment capability and are being a bit more circumspect.
I only have some safety
If that was a partner responsible for recruitment, I do apologise.
We'll carry on and leave the to the back.
So I have got one more thing to add to that before the incident. By just going back to the question, one thing I would say is, we're talking about prior experience. It's so easy to undervalue the experience you've had doing something prior to coming into practice. And I've fallen into that trap myself. There are things you do, there are experiences you have that you may not feel as remotely relevant to law, because that's what law expects of you. But actually, if you've got experience doing anything that somebody else hasn't, you'll be surprised how much value you can add. And don't be shy. I've come from a background just working within the legal profession, years as a barrister's clerk, come into an organisation where immediately above me are some sort of revered, successful, multi-millionaire investment banker entrepreneur types, and they ask me questions about stuff, which for a start was a bit daunting, and then I answer them, even more daunting, on the basis of what I think is quite an obvious answer, and they go, wow, that's amazing, thank God you're here. So there is stuff you know that you don't realise the value of, so you need to recognise the value of your experience.
Yeah. And because lawyers are so anally retentive, if we do get an application form by email, as I do, calling me, hello Mr. Nicky Richmond, or spelling my name wrong, or just basically illiterate in parts, I am going to bin it. So, and you will be surprised at how many CVs I get where the spell check has not been used. And it's so basic, but so please just take care over the application, make sure it's legible, and make sure there are no typos in it.
Can I make a really literally patronising comment in that regard, which is, if you happen to be living at home, I know your parents are awful, but you can actually ask them to read something through, because, I mean, I still do it when I send out opinions sometimes. Somehow you get word blindness, and there are typos in it, and Nicky's quite right. It's going to get chucked out. And I've also got a son who hasn't got a job. And I was going through, it's a good house at the moment. I was going through his CV the other day and I said, well, you know, there's a typo there. So get someone else, so get your housemate or get you know, someone you live with to read through your CV, don't be embarrassed about it. Because they will spot it and you won't because you've read it so many times.
You see, we are the people who never make mistakes in typos or anything. Our letters never have any mistakes in them, but we see them in others.
Yeah,
from my point of view, if someone sends me a typo, I normally phone them up or respond to their email and say, you've done this, because if they made that mistake once, they're probably going to use the same form and send it to 100 firms, and that's really not fair to turn them down for 100 jobs. Not just one, but try and look at, and I suppose actually spell check makes as many mistakes as it corrects. So quite often you type something, you've done a typo, and it changes one word to 2 words, and it's incredible that it's come up with something completely stupid. Or it might come up with something really good and get you the job. So in that case, try and leave it in.
Okay, any more questions? Oh, go for it.
Okay, well, going from the complete flip, what is your advice for somebody who has gone straight through school, straight through uni, straight through law school? How the bloody hell am I supposed to
My answer is the same as my answer to the previous one, really, which is make yourself look interesting. We are looking, because we're going to be looking at hundreds of applications from people who've all got really good academics, as good as yours, maybe better, who knows. But what will make you stand out from that is, you can't differentiate on academics. What will make you stand out is if you've done something that's interesting. You know, be that captain of a sports team, do some charity thing. You know, we've had people. I mean, I've interviewed people who've actually run businesses while they were at university, selling stuff on the internet. And I had one guy he was an officer in the Territorial Army while he was at university. Just makes you stand out. Just have something on your CV that makes you stand out. That's my advice.
On my CV, I put life-saving appliances tester, and they said, "What does that mean?" I said, "I tested life jackets." They said, "What did that involve?" I said, "Jumping in and out of the swimming pool." I said, "Wow, how long did you do that for?" I said, "An afternoon." It's certainly all I could find. Seriously, if your barrel is not so full that you have to dig down that deep to come up with something to say, then I'll be very surprised. I'm sure you'll find something to say. One other tip I would have in it, this is an absolutely personal one and others may differ, is I hate the X Factor applications. The ones that say, "I have dreamed since childhood." Tax, whatever. This is my passion. I feel I wake up in the morning absolutely demented with the thought of taxing statutes. Really, because if that is true, you're the last person I want to be.
But it's the honesty thing, it's be honest,
Yeah.
and it's not authentic. And as soon as it's not authentic, it screams off the page and just cringe and bin, and that's it.
I do think if you're, on a really sort of quite a serious note, if you are coming straight through just school, university, then going on to do professional qualification and trying to get a training contract, you're doing it, in some senses, you're doing it the hard way. It sounds slightly counterintuitive, but you are doing it the hard way because you do have to have something that gives you some depth, as everybody's saying. And I would go so far as to say, really think hard about taking out a year and doing something that could be connected with the law. That could be linked with, if you're interested in commercial law, do something in commerce, do something with a tech company, do something that shows you have some understanding of it. If you're interested in sports, go and work for a regulatory body, whatever. If you're interested in crime or human rights, go and work for a human rights organisation. But do some crime. But it really is worth doing something that you can talk about in an interview, that gives you connections, that has you meet. But the other thing is that a legal career is often really long, and you're going to be doing years and years, decades of law. To take a little bit of time before you jump into that, to have that. I was going to take my mother's an immigrant, right? She's a Jamaican immigrant, so she didn't ever want me doing anything that really wasn't very professional. right? So, you know, you come from an immigrant family, people probably agree, you know, your parents are doctor, lawyer, you know, the idea that you do philosophy, what are you going to be, a philosopher? Like, why would you do that? So, so I was doing exactly that. Didn't take a year out between university and school and university, but I ended up taking 2 years out between graduating from university and going to bar school. And the reason I did that is because I just needed some depth to what I was doing. I was on a treadmill. And first I was going to take 1 year, then it ended up being 2 years. And that time that I had enabled me to meet people, make contacts, do stuff, which even to this day, you know, I'm glad I made those contacts. I saw someone the other day from that period. We were, you know, exchanging stories about what we've done and the experience that I've had. So I really would recommend, it sounds like quite a sort of jolt to the kind of game plan, but I really would recommend inserting that year in, even if it's connected with the law, to give you some kind of extra depth on your CV. Because otherwise you'll find you make applications, you're not getting where you want to go and you're thinking, why? But it's because you need that something extra that you can talk about, people can talk about with you.
Yeah, because there are so many people who have the academics. That's the thing. There are so many people who already fulfil the criteria. And in fact, if the academics are too good, I'm a bit worried, because I think they're going to be a bit geeky and not commercially practical. So you can be too good, you know, if it's sort of straight 11, 12 A stars, and then it's 4 A's at A level, and then it's a double first at Cambridge. I think, I'm not sure they're in the real world. For what we do, it just depends on the type of practice. For the practice that we do, where it's very commercial, very day-to-day, it's not esoteric, it's not, you know, it's not sitting and writing opinions, it's actually day-to-day contact with difficult clients, handling difficult clients, having to deal with all sorts of personalities. So I absolutely agree with everything that's been said, to put something on your CV that shows that you've got some initiative, that shows you can deal with different situations and makes you stand out. So.
And I think it's wrong to put pressure on yourself to feel this need to go down this template route. Particularly when it's quite simply the statistics show that it's damn difficult. The numbers are out there, it's obvious. So putting pressure on yourself is wrong. And the reasons we've already said, getting the other experience is becoming more and more valued within the marketplace. Also, it's been mentioned that networking, take the opportunity to network as much as you can, but either within the legal business, but also within the relevant fields, if it's commercial, or as we said, maybe not the crime, but there are all other ways of differentiating yourself.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that's been said so far. I mean, it's about showing that you've got something that the other candidates haven't. But going back to having some awareness of the world, if you come all the way straight through, that's going to be more difficult. I know you probably think that you're fully aware of what's going on in the world, but yeah, emphasise the jobs that you've done. The fact that it was working in a bar or whatever while you were going through your degree, well, that can actually give you quite a lot of insight. That enables you to communicate with difficult people who happen to be drunk. And if you haven't ever got a job,
on the path that you're going to be.
Yeah. And if you've never had a job of that sort, then go out and get one now if you can.
Can I just ask on a similar theme that you're saying, you talk about the graduate route. Now there are other routes, and legal apprentices are being talked about now. There's of course the Silex route. Now the cost of university is getting quite expensive, the GDL is quite expensive, the LPC is expensive, the BPTC is expensive. Are these other routes actual genuine options for people? Can they get away with not going to university? Can they go these other ways? Do you think that's going to be a potential route, or do you think it's a waste of time? I'm going to start with Sean.
Right. Yes, maybe the profession suffers from being incredibly middle class. So what that has two consequences. The first is that we all defer gratification endlessly. So we live miserable lives and the hope our retirements will be great. But the other problem is a complete lack of imagination, which is expressed also in the fact that if you're here and you stand a realistic prospect of getting into the profession, the chances are you have excellent academics, which means that you have lived the I won't go out, I'll stay at home and do the work, I will focus on what my long-term goals are. But I mean, I'm a barrister through complete lack of imagination. I just saw, actually I won't tell you the story because it's rude, but let's just say at an early age I saw something which persuaded me being a barrister might be a good idea, and then I just kind of kept my head down and kept going at it, and never say that for a podcast. But when you arrive at the law, what I find is when I interview people, say, what do you want to do? And they all now say the same thing, human rights. What's the human rights law? Really, all people trying to get into law want to do human rights, and there are some great human rights lawyers. There aren't a lot of human rights lawyers. So people have a lack of imagination about what one might do in the law. And I'm doing employment law, which I had no intention at all of doing when I started pupillage. It was of the 3 things my chambers did, the one thing I was definitely not interested in doing. And then I did a case with my pupil master, and he said, this is a difficult one. It all turns on whether the stain on the secretary's chair is semen or yoghurt. And I thought, this is it. I could do this. So just by kind of keeping that in mind, I ended up doing something completely different to what I thought I might want to do. And the Silex route, etc., legal apprenticeships suffer from the same lack of imagination. People think there is only one way of achieving this goal, and it's what's been described, I thought, very eloquently by Jeremy as the template approach. That there is a set series of steps you take, and they will produce the outcome you want. There are a million different ways of organising your life, and just think how sad some of us are. Some of us have done school, university, bar, gone to the bar, started our practice and just kept doing it day after day after day for years ever since. It's one way of doing it, but it's one of a nearly infinite number of ways of doing it. And it's not a way which is going to suit everyone. So you need to know yourself well enough to know which route is the one which is most likely to appeal to you. And I wish more people spent some time understanding themselves better before they embarked on this process.
Can I get a sister view on that? Nigel, maybe?
I think it's one of those it depends questions, because the legal profession is extremely diverse. I don't think the city, speaking as the city firm lawyer, I don't think the city firms are going to go down any route other than the conventional one that they're using at the moment anytime soon. But I do know that some of the sort of the smaller firms, and a friend of mine is the managing partner of a sort of, I think it's about an 8, 9, 10 partner firm. And the last 5 years or so, all their trainees have started out as sort of paralegals, as opposed to being recruited through the sort of more conventional route. And the reason for that is that it's to a smaller firm, it's a massive risk taking on a trainee, and so they have this sort of I will say this suck it and see approach to give them a chance to prove themselves, and if they prove themselves over a period of a year or so, then they take them on. And I think Nicky said earlier that you were doing it at Richmond as well.
Well, yeah, we haven't given a training contract from day one for 4 years.
Yeah.
Because we had bad experiences with certain trainees where they just didn't work out, and we didn't need to. The market changed, quite frankly. Up till 2007, we didn't have a choice because people wouldn't take paralegal positions. So if we wanted the best people, we had to give them a training contract. There was no choice. The market absolutely died. It was in our favour in that way, and we got much better pick of people, and we could actually take them on a flexible basis. So it was less risk to us, and so that was the way that we took people on. And we've taken 3 people on. One of them we took on as a paralegal, and then he did his training whilst he was working. So on the job took him 3 years. He's just qualified. And we're very flexible in that we've taken people on who are ILEX and then want to convert to being a full a solicitor. We've also had secretaries who've basically upgraded themselves and are taking conveyancing exams. And one of my best, I call her a partner, but she's not a partner, is actually not a solicitor, but actually did a law degree, then did nothing else, but has worked her way up. And actually she's one of the best lawyers in the firm. So I think in the smaller firms, you're right, there's much more flexibility. We'll just look at, are you able to do the job? Are you doing the job well? Not what's on your CV necessarily or how you've come in. It's really just on merit. But it's much harder, I agree with you, it's much harder. City firms just won't look at it in that way. Not for the moment.
We're very high down.
Just pick up another question that's been sent in advance from, I think, Ife Chukwu. When you look at the current legal and in particular bar training, what information do you think the Bar Standards Board or the SRA and other regulators need to be better communicating to prospective students? I suppose to answer that question as well, when should they be communicating it? Start with you, Mark, as well.
I've no idea what that question means.
I think he's getting at what do students need to be told about the realities of the professions?
Well, in terms of, one's got to have your eyes open, and it relates to the previous question, and I feel sorry for you in a sense that earlier I was saying, you know, I went through school, I did, at 16 I went to see my careers master, careers teacher, and they said, oh, you want to be a lawyer, right, you do English, history, economics, or whatever, because that's what you did, and I wish you'd have said do maths, physics, chemistry, and do a science degree and then qualify, etc., etc. So be aware, and it really is a shame because it's too late for you in some respects, that study what you want to study, right, and then qualify as a lawyer, because one, it is better for your soul to do that, and two, it doesn't make you a better lawyer to have done a law degree, it just makes you bored and boring in some respects. So you have to go on with that. In terms of professional qualifications, you've just got to be ethical in so many ways to tick the box to qualify. You've got to do all that is required for qualification. Is saying, you know, try not to do drugs, try not to be convicted of criminal offences, pass the exams and get a job. And we all here are very lucky because we're just that little bit older than you. So when I applied for a training contract, or articles as it was called then, you know what, I sailed through my degree. I got a 2-2 from Middlesex Poly as it then was. I didn't bother to apply for a job because I was too lazy to do that. I went to Chester Law School because I didn't have a job to go to, so I thought I'd better do law school at the end of my degree. And I thought, oh, you know what, everyone else has got articles, I better get some articles. I'll phone up a recruitment consultant. Nobody can do that now. I phoned up a recruitment consultant. They sent me down to a firm of solicitors, and I went in for an interview and said, yeah, what question would you like to ask me? He said, when can you start? And I said, well, pretty soon, and he gave me the job. I hated the job. After 8 months, I thought, you know what, I really don't like this job. I'll phone up the recruitment consultant and say, you've sent me to a really bad firm, get me another firm, please. And they sent me to another firm who paid commission to recruit me, and I went to there. That obviously doesn't happen. Nobody goes through a recruitment consultant these days to get a job, so it's very hard. And I think there's probably an oversupply to the market. It was easier in my day, in our day, that there were probably fewer law graduates who were applying for articles than there were vacancies. Now there are so many places, BPP, etc., churning out people applying for jobs. And it's a real shame. And we didn't have to pay back money that we'd borrowed to study, because we didn't borrow money, they paid us to study. We got grants, it was fantastic. It was a wonderful time.
Feeling good now, aren't you?
That's what it's about. So what you need to know is, right, you're hearing from people who are telling you how ideal you should be, knowing that actually we all know that we weren't like that at all. So do your best and try and get the jobs. And actually what's out there is very different. I mean, I wanted to be a non-contentious corporate lawyer. I thought that's, you know, everybody wants to be a human rights lawyer. It's different times. The year before me, everyone wanted to be a personal injury lawyer because Piper Alpha had happened, and everybody wanted to be Roger Pannoni at the time. So, you know, and people who had articles of Pannoni's were going to do some really great disasters. Planes were going to fall out of the skies. Cranes were going to be like falling over, oil rigs were going to blow up, and this is where the law was going to be at. And then the following law is sort of the big bang was happening in the city. We're all going to be corporate lawyers, and we're, you know, wearing stripy suits and waistcoats and earning lots and lots of money. And actually, just do what you want. You know, the law, as one of you said before, is so different. So just keep on an eye on what you want to achieve, what you want to do, and don't be persuaded what other people what other people want to do, because we'll all come into things differently. One person might want to be a corporate lawyer, and one person might want to help people who need welfare benefits or crime. I remember this story, and it's sort of worth repeating. It's not one that happened to me, but I read in the one of the magazines many years ago, before the web existed. Somebody said, you know, I was at a careers event, and the first person said, I'm at such and such city firm, and it was great, we did this through the night deal, and we stayed up through the night and sold such and such a company or whatever, and somebody else said, oh yeah, we did a through the night deal, whatever. And then the third person said, And I'm from a legal aid practice in Liverpool, and the only through the night that we've done is the office Christmas party. And actually, it's worth remembering that, because sometimes that might be what you want to do. And don't sort of compare yourself or judge yourself by other people.
PJ?
Well, I think professional bodies should be honest and say that too many people are coming through at the moment, because there's, as you know, there aren't the jobs there at the moment. So what does that mean? Well, that means we've done all the bit about how you're going to have to make yourself look over and above your competitors. But it also means, frankly, you have to be lucky. Yeah, it's the old story about, you know, when we get 600 applications for pupillage. We don't do this, in case, for the record, we do not do this. You know, you throw up all the applications in the air, and you then grab them, because you don't want any barristers who are unlucky anyway. So, so you got to hope you're going to be lucky. I'd also say that the regulators should be saying, or we should be saying, be ready to be flexible. And I think for some people, okay, you haven't got into that dream city firm that you were going to get into, and you've ended up in a firm on Balham High Street. Nothing wrong with Balham High Street, that's where I live. But actually, you've qualified, you're a solicitor. You can then move on. So be flexible, don't give up your ambitions, but be flexible and look for the opportunity and hope you're lucky.
Can I just say real quick, I think the advice people should be getting from bodies or whatever is, don't be ashamed to get out of it. Like, leave. If you don't like it, just find something else. It's okay. Like, you don't have to be a lawyer. You know, there's people that say, I like to argue with my mum, and therefore she said, you really should be a lawyer. Like, that's fine. That's when you were 9. You know, like, you're a grown-up person. If you don't like it, like any other job, go and do something else. Because if you don't like it, the law is hell. It's a horrible job to be in. You will never enjoy it. You should get out and do something which you do like and where you will find you enjoy yourself.
But lawyers don't like to admit they're fake.
Right. That's part of the problem. You don't want to admit to people around you that this is not for me, I'm out of this. So be confident to do that. Some of the most interesting people were once lawyers, and they've become and done much better things than the lawyers. So have no fear about leaving the law.
You're referring to politicians?
Anybody, no. Anybody. But genuinely, and the second thing I would say, if you find something in it that you do like, then go for that. You know, if you like human rights, do it. Don't worry about people saying, oh, there's not much money in it, because there can be lots of money in it. Don't worry about people saying, don't be a corporate lawyer because it's boring. If you find that you like that, then you're very lucky. You found something that you're good at, that you like, keep on at it. But don't be afraid to change your plan, leave the law entirely, and just be flexible about it, because that's the only way you'll find the right place for you.
Yeah, and just following off that, and you'll know what I mean when I say this, but there's lots of people who tick all the boxes, and they come and they work really hard, but the light doesn't switch on. It's like a switch. And it just doesn't happen for some people. And you have to recognise that yourself when you're that person. And they're working, I've had people working till 11 o'clock at night trying to just do that bit more, when actually they should have been finishing at 6. But because they don't get it, they're working and they overwork, over-try, and they don't want to give up because the training is so hard, but it's been such a struggle to get there. But it's not for everybody. A lot of you will just not get it. And it's when people say, well, what is it? How do I think like a lawyer? I can't tell you. You just know it when you see it. And it's just
can be a sign of your humanity. Yeah. It can be a sign of the really boring legal profession is not for you. There's something much more interesting out there. I mean, it sounds really sort of kind of weird for us to be saying the law might not be for you, but you've got to be confident in saying I've got to find the right thing for me. Some of the best lawyers I know, some who are really, really good, are people who didn't fit the ordinary mould. They walked away from being a lawyer and then they came back into it because they found that the experience they'd had in life actually made them be able to come back into a legal career with something really interesting and different perspective on it. You know, go and do something else if it's not for you. There's no magic about being a lawyer. It actually can be one of the most boring jobs out there, and not necessarily a particularly reliable one. The days where you get your law degree and then you've got a job and it's going to be this great career, so at least it's safe and solid, those days are gone. It's like any other job. So if you don't like it, and you're not enjoying it, find something else. And if the law is actually for you, you'll find your way back into it. You'll drift back into it again. Be confident on that.
Any questions? Oh, go for it.
Like on that note, if law is for you, you want to do something else. Like I think when I was at uni, most of the law undergraduates now aren't lawyers, and everyone who did plastics is a city solicitor. If you, obviously you've all got very successful careers like at the bar or as solicitors, but that wasn't necessarily always the case for you. If you could see your skills applying somewhere else, or if you saw yourself ever having a different career other than law, what would you have gone into? Or if, you know, if I'm going to ask for your people, for your chambers to solve, what would you see yourself doing now?
Good question. Go back. We'll come back to surely a food writer.
Absolutely. You know, I always thought, and this is the absolute truth, I thought I'll do law for 10 years, then I'll open up a restaurant, because then I'll make enough money to do it, but that was like 1,000 years ago, so that never quite happened. But I've sort of quietly got into becoming a food writer in my own spare time. And actually I've combined something I love doing, which is creative writing, with something I have to do, which is taking clients out for entertainment.
Sounds like such a burden.
It's terrible. It's a dirty. Someone's got to do it. And so no, I would do writing. Actually, joking apart, what I thought I'd like to do is actually mentor younger people who are coming into the law, and specifically women, to just help them find their way and actually give the benefit of that, you know, that if I knew them whole thing. I'd also be a garden landscape designer. So that would be
allotments.
Well, I do grow. I've got my own hens, and I do grow my own vegetables, but you know, it's a start.
Didn't realise you grew hens in gardens, but Jeremy.
I think it's in the nature of somebody who, if somebody goes down the law route, to see it as failure if they change. And Matthew's point was spot on. And I think, I'm afraid I've seen too many people, even successful lawyers, being very miserable, not happy with what they're doing. So I guess if you go down that route, the whole concept of change as failure is something you've got to get over, because that's the mindset of the lawyer. For me personally, I'm not a lawyer. I've got a law O-level. To the extent I'm probably the least qualified legal person in this room. So most of my career has been as a barrister's clerk, but the interest there is that you're working with and you're managing and you're motivating people and at all levels, both right at the junior people end and the senior silks. And I think that the thing you really learn and understand more so when you come out into a different role is how much connection you have with different types of people, running each practice as an individual business. So you're seeing the strengths and weaknesses of so many different businesses under one roof that you wouldn't otherwise get other than going to 50 or 60 different jobs. You're seeing that all in one go. So applying that sort of people knowledge and understanding can be a very powerful thing in any walk of life, whether it's law or anything. And actually my nearest comparison, and something I did before I came into all this, I was a golf caddy, quite a successful golf caddy. You know, I was a British champion golf caddy. I was caddy for the British champion in 1990 something. But actually that is a massive psychological job, never mind the picking the clubs. Saying the right thing to the person or saying something in a certain way at a certain time is absolutely critical. I mean, what you've got to say to a silk just before they go into court can actually can make or ruin their day and your career.
I was looking at everyone else's online CVs, and these guys have all got really impressive sort of comments about them, you know, stunning intellect and all sorts of things like this. And my CV used to say he would have preferred to have been a midfield dynamo for Chelsea FC. I think one of the things about, there are different types of lawyers. I think a lot of people at the bar actually thrive on adrenaline and do everything at the last minute. And I think therefore I'm in that state of mind, and I would have gone in something that put a lot of pressure on at the last minute. I've always fancied myself as a chef, so actually being in there and doing it at the last minute. But I probably would have ended up being a school teacher, to be honest. Or a DJ. Or a ski bum. That's what I want to do now. I want to give up and go and be a ski bum for a couple of years.
I think from my point of view, it sort of goes back to doing a straight law degree, etc., which is what I did. Nobody gave us proper careers advice as to what we could do, because I actually am obsessively interested in old cars, and no one told me that actually, so I became a lawyer to earn money to buy old cars. That was what it was about. I was going to be hopeless as a mechanic, and mechanics were never going to earn enough to buy the old cars that I wanted to have. So I thought, well, I'll be a lawyer. You earn a lot of money at being a lawyer, and therefore you can buy old cars. But no one said, oh, well, why don't you become a historian or a writer or an auctioneer? And I think if I had my time again, I would probably do that, buy and sell some old cars, maybe work for one of the big auctioneers, work my way up as an apprentice, that way become a motoring journalist or something far, far better than being a lawyer. A lawyer is a boring option.
Should come back to you.
Yeah, I've written, remember what I wanted to do. in my youth,
is it a memory?
In my youth, I was a drummer in a band that, for reasons that won't become apparent, was called Strawberry Brick. And if Strawberry Brick had made it, that would have been my idea career.
Sure.
I really love being a lawyer, so it's difficult, but everyone in Chambers has what they call their goat herd fantasy, which is where you're having a particularly hideous day, and you think, what could I do which is really unlike this? And generally it's a kind of variation of a theme of owning some tiny bookshop come coffee house in Devon. For me, bear with me on this, it's midwifery. I quite like to be a midwife because I think it's just, as a lawyer you meet so many unbelievably miserable people in difficult circumstances. To be in a job where people were having fabulously happy things happen, albeit miserably painful. Fantastic.
So you can tell it's a male point of view.
That's the different perspective. So a really jolly midwife.
Top that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably want to be a journalist. Yeah.
Right, I've got time for maybe one or two more. Go through quicker with the fingers.
Do you think that the training contract and pupillage should be a substantive step that people have to go through to qualify as a lawyer? Or do you think there's a good case to go the American route and just have people do bar school and then have to do some?
I think that there is, the trouble is that the reality of legal practice is that there is a world of difference between the academic study of law and its practice. I don't quite dread, but I hate it when I get first seat trainees, because I know I'm going to spend the first 2 months beating academia out of them, not literally. And if I had a pound for every time I'd said to a trainee, the client does not want an essay, I'd be a rich man. The ideal, from most clients' point of view, the ideal piece of advice is yes. It's not the case of so-and-so versus so-and-so demonstrates that. It's yes. It's normally yes, but yes.
I wouldn't do it, and the reason why I wouldn't do it is people come, if you've come successfully out of, say, law school, the chances are, and it's probably true of most of the people in the room, that you fall into a very elite category of people who really never quite failed at anything. So that to get here, you've got good exam results consistently, you've got yourself a degree, if you've got through bar school or law school, you've done very well. And the chances are that you will resemble what I was like in my first few months of practice, which was a tremendously self-important arse. And I thought I was God's gift to the law. And I was the last person that anyone should have let near anyone's real-life difficulties. So the purpose for me of pupillage was, to some extent, to be around people who were experienced in such that they understood that the practice of law is not about you, it's about the client and about achieving what they do and deploying your skills to bring about the result that they want. That it's about persuasion, not argument, it's not about being right, it's about persuading people you're right. All these things are things you really learn in pupillage and you do not learn in bar school. And now I'm on the other side of it, I think, how did anyone let me loose on their lives, hand over probably the most stressful possible event that they had encountered to that point in their lives, when I had all of 6 months experience of pupillage, of following around about, you know, in 12-month pupillage you can be up taking cases in your own right after 6 months. The fact that it's that short a period is what I find scary, rather than that we're taking too long to push people into taking people's lives in their hands and gambling with them.
Jeremy, let's get your opinion on this one.
Yeah, well, I think Nigel made the great point about the huge gap between what education prepares you for and legal practice. It's clear and it's well known that the whole regime needs changing, but who knows the glacial pace of change that's going to happen. But it sort of goes back to the earlier question that I didn't get a chance to answer actually, about Silex, and just as an illustration of the alternative routes. I've talked earlier about this gap between intellectual legal ability and what an output for a business client. You're going from there to there, and there's a gap in the middle that isn't always dealt with. From the Silex route or apprenticeships or other routes like that, you can go up through a business side and then bring in the law and do it that way around. And actually you'll find that's a very effective way of doing things. And it hasn't been used enough. And I think in the changing legal market and the different shapes and sizes of businesses out there, there will be different opportunities that create the ability to go in through that route that will be equally, if not more effective in the longer term.
Can I just say real quick, I think that one of the best things you can do at this stage in your legal careers is try and spend some time with the most experienced, kind of best quality lawyer you can find. You know, if you can do that as part of a training contract, that's great. If you can't do it as part of a training contract, find some way to work alongside the most experienced, best quality lawyer you can find, because those experiences at the early stage of your career, where you're seeing somebody who is able to really deconstruct how a case is won, or how you deal with clients, or how you do the job, to see the best you can see at doing that. That's the beauty of having training, having that period of pupillage or training contract, or having some prospect of working alongside somebody who knows what they're doing and you don't. You get to make mistakes on their time, you get to watch what they're doing and learn from them, and that, you'll be amazed, pretty much everybody on this panel will tell you that something that happened in the first year of their training, they still remember that lesson now, and it still influences how they practice today. So we don't all have the opportunity to get the training contract with the best firm you want to be with, or the best chambers you want to be with, but you've got to try and find a way, even if it's pro bono, try and find a way while you're doing your day job to wangle some way of working alongside that lawyer who you really want to work with, because that person will show you something which will carry you through into your career. And I would say that in any job, but especially, you know, the worst thing I hear amongst, when I'm talking to young people, some who want legal careers, some who don't, is the kind of apprentice type of thing. You know, well, Lord Sugar, I started my own business at age 17. You know, and you think this is just a nightmare. People at age 17 or age 18 shouldn't be working for themselves. You want people, for as long as possible, to try and work alongside other people and learn from them. And the idea that you can get that experience in training is a really, really good opportunity. Don't let it go wandering.
And you can even get that experience by just going to your local courts or the High Court, or just watching people as well. I think
just
really
get
helps.
to see.
I mean,
I had one person in particular I work with quite a bit now. He just had the confidence to send me an email saying, I understand from somebody that you wanted a bit of research done on something. Can I help? And I said to him, okay, if you can, by Wednesday, if you can get me something on this, that's fine. He said, can I do it for Thursday? I said, no, I need it for Wednesday. Wednesday arrived, it was immaculate. And from then I thought, wow, who's this person? Who are they? I want to work with them. You know, they were somebody right at the beginning of their career, but they were just determined to try and find a way to work on this particular case. Yeah. And I think that level of energy and reliability, which are the two most important things for litigators, energy and reliability, that energy and reliability to try and work alongside the best person you can is something that will carry you through your career.
Any more questions? Yeah, I've got to say you earlier.
Yeah, I was just going to say, looking back on your careers, what would you say would be the highs and lows? And in terms of legal environment, because I work in law for myself, I know it can be quite stressful. And how have you dealt with the times when it has, you know, reached like meltdown?
I know this is a brave question to ask of lawyers, but can you keep it brief?
Right. High is my my one House of Lords case that set precedent. Low was as a trainee getting very upset in the High Court because I had to sort of represent the council who were taking away this poor lady's children and she'd been clean and sober for some months, but the pressure of the court case had got to her and she turned up drunk, and it all went pear-shaped. That was a real blow.
Sean?
Hi, having a client say, I don't care whether we win this case or not now, you gave him such a shoeing in cross-examination, I'm going to be smiling for the rest of my life. Quite like that. And the negative was against someone represented by a FRU rep. Their case imploded. I was given £3,000 to go and offer this 75-year-old man who they had terminated on capability grounds. I was a smart aleck and I went in with a low ball offer with a view to negotiating. They held my hand and wept with gratitude that I had offered them that sum, and it was well short of what I had in the pool. And went back and asked my client if I could up the offer, albeit that it had been accepted, and he said, no, that would be mad. And I am certain I'm going to hell as a result of those few moments of reading before the tribunal.
Hi, probably getting asked to work on Stephen Lawrence's case when I was quite junior barrister. That was pretty exciting, and that still to this day was one of the most exciting things and interesting things in my career. Low, probably going to the commercial court just about, not commercial lawyer, going to commercial court about a year after pupillage and not being properly prepared, and it was like a scene from My Cousin Vinny. It was just horrendous, and it made me think very carefully about if I ever want to step foot in court again, being that unprepared, so I haven't.
Well, I can't really match those because I do property law. I'm afraid that buying a building doesn't quite cut it in the same way. But actually the highs for me, actually the people issues, dealing with, I enjoy running the firm in a successful way, hopefully, keeping people happy, bringing people on, just the people issues, the engagement, that's the bit that I really get the high from. The deals are nice, clients saying thank you is nice, but really it's just the engagement. And the lows is when things go wrong and a client rings you and says, remember that lease you did 2 years ago, can I just check? And your stomach goes, and usually it's fine, sometimes it's not. That's the worst. We don't like to make mistakes, and we're very self-punishing as lawyers when we do. We've got to be right. You see, you're paid to be right 100% of the time. You don't allow yourself to be wrong. So it's devastating and mistakes do happen. We all make mistakes. But those are those. There are no, I'm afraid there's no Stephen Lawrence or anything like property law, but it's very satisfying when you bring people on, you grow people and you grow teams and you run a happy, successful ship.
Well, that really aligns with mine, because to the high, like any barrister's clerk, I think, is when you see somebody you've known from pupillage or pre-pupillage go on throughout their career and take silk and or become a judge, and you've played a big part in that over the long term. That's a pretty special feeling and a pretty high feeling. I guess the low, for me, certainly, and there's a lesson here, I had a very nice job as a senior clerk at Bristol, which is a very good legal market, just the right environment between quality and serious business and a bit of lifestyle. It's a good place. And I moved, took a big sort of high-profile position, moved to London for that position. And during the notice period that I was working in Bristol, the head of chambers and committee that recruited me had all been ousted in a contentious election. So it was a completely different set of people there who wanted something totally different. It all went horribly wrong. I lasted about 8 months. But a bit of a lesson there in actually be careful what you wish for.
High happens occasionally. You might think it should happen all the time, which is when you come out of court or out of a tribunal and you've had a cross-examination, you think, my goodness, I was good today. And it doesn't happen every time. Maybe it probably does to these gentlemen over there, but lows are the ones that are in fact what you learn from. So going into the Court of Appeal with a ridiculously long grounds of appeal, being criticised for a scattergun approach, losing because you haven't focused on your good points and you've got all these other rubbish points. Other lows include, in fact, I was a solicitor before I became a barrister when I was a article clerk, as they were then called, going into court in the High Court, bowing as I walked in at the person, and this person just going, whereas I just bowed at the clerk and the judge was at the other end of the room. So, you learn from all these sort of
I think my low was being prodded by a litigant in person. He must have prodded me about 20 times as probably 1 or 2 year qualified solicitor, trying to take his Doma Kebab ban or something off him in some repossession case, and he was very violent and very upsetting. The high was probably, and it sort of reflects on some of the things that were said earlier, was actually 2009, walking away from my job, having a choice to do what I was doing, absolutely losing all my pay. It didn't seem very high at the time, but it was the best thing to do is to say, you know what, I'm going to walk away, I'm going to do what I think is the right thing rather than stay as a partner in a law firm earning a lot of money. I only regret that at least 3 times a day that I don't earn a lot of money.
Again, a quickish question, but one that I get asked quite a lot is how long, if people keep getting rejected, how long should they keep trying for before actually just saying, look, I'm sick of it, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore? It's just like you.
Well, it's the same answer really, because if you want to do something, just keep on doing it and keep on trying. And actually, from my point of view, I mean, my life is very different from other lawyers. But for 2 years, I really was going through hell. I'd lost my job. 1 year I earned 10,000. 2009 to 2010, I earned £10,000. I could have earned more at McDonald's. Next year I earned £30,000. I could have earned as much in Pratt as a sandwich making manager or something. And at the point of basically giving up, getting a phone call from Sally Dowler, and all of a sudden you realise what you're about and what you're doing, and the privilege to represent clients that are in a position. I was earning far more before that, and so you've got to decide what you want out of life and what you do, and sometimes it's quite nice to have a bit of a wake-up call and realise it can help people or whatever you want to do.
Don't give up, but you've got to think, how come I'm getting so many rejections, and therefore how am I going to go about making sure that I improve my chances next time? And that may mean, as we've discussed at length earlier, taking a break and going out into the real world and getting a different job and coming back at it. So it's how you next time going to make sure that your CV or your application form is different from the other 399.
Yeah, simply try something different. If you keep failing through a certain route, as I said before, there are plenty of alternative routes opening up. There are plenty of relevant other disciplines than law, certainly working in business. Get some more experience and try again.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I would say they don't give up, but also just realise that there are market forces at play. It may not be that it's anything to do with you, and that you're not right for it, or there's something wrong with your CV. It just may be that actually there just aren't enough places at the moment because of the financial situation, and you might have to just take a step aside for a while and come back to it, exactly that. So, but not to get disheartened by that.
I always say work out what you want. If you really want to work in an area of law and you're applying for certain jobs, then if you want to be in that environment, find some other way to get in there. I knew if I hadn't got a place at my chambers after I finished pupillage, I really wanted to do a certain job. I'd have gone to work for a law centre, I'd have gone to work for a CAB if I had to. I really, really wanted to do that area of law, and I'd have slept on the sofa in my friend's house or going to live with my mum if I had to, in order to be able to just find a way to get in there. On the other hand, if what you really want is a stable job and you're trying to get a legal career because you want a good job that's going to get you some money, and you're not getting those responses, move out pretty quickly. Find some other thing. If it's about trying to earn a good living and the lawyers are providing it for you, there's plenty of other jobs out there. So work out exactly why you want a job as a lawyer, and then find a way to hit it from another angle. If you just keep on doing the same thing, every month putting in 30 applications for training contracts, and over and over and over again, pretty quickly you'll realise I've got to change it in some way. Work out what you want, and that will help you know how you change it. Do you change it in a different thing in the same career, or do you just go for something different in terms of making the same kind of money?
2 years ago, I sat by a pool in a house in Singapore, and the housekeeper brought out the freshly made prawn snacks and beers for everyone, and I turned to my friend and said, "You must really regret having been turned down in pupillage." And he said, "Do you have no idea that every day I climb into my fantastic car and go off to my business and just weep at the thought that I am not appearing in some magistrate's court on the South Coast." I'll tell you that story simply because, and to echo something that Matthew said, people who come into the law don't give up soon enough. It's generally a problem that businesses face. People trade themselves into debt, thinking next year will be different, next year will be different. The one great advantage about this profession is you can go away and come back. So the answer may be, it's not right for me now. That doesn't mean you failed, you're never going to do it, it just means now is not the time to do it. And the one thing you do not want to do is what I've seen people do, which is 12 months pupillage, third sixth, fourth sixth, fifth sixth, squat, move to a tiny set of chambers in Cheltenham, squat there. No one is offering them tenancy, their income is on a downward path. And no one ever takes you aside and says, stop this. And you can rapidly find yourself in a position where you've taken on so much debt, so much commitment, that you have effectively bound yourself for decades to come. That you would put yourself under a burden you're going to find difficult to shift. Now I realise it would be better if I were to say follow your dream, and do follow your dream, but if you don't have the common sense to recognise when you're getting yourself into serious trouble by staying around too long, law's probably not the right thing for you in any event, because people depend on you to have good sense and to be able to produce practical advice in difficult financial circumstances. So I think it may be different for solicitors. The bar will let you just keep trying as long as your bank manager will keep you there. There will always be an opportunity to spend more time getting further into debt, chasing a dream, but what may be the wrong time to be chasing it. And there is a whole world of fantastic and interesting things you don't even know exist at the moment, that you could be exploring for fun and profit, whilst you better position yourself and acquire the experience to come back and make a success in the law. So don't stick at it as long as many people do, is what I would say.
I'm going to say, do follow your dream, but I think if you really, really, really want to be a lawyer, then don't give up. But be prepared to be flexible. If you're only applying to city firms and the city doesn't want to know, think about there's plenty of other firms out there, and you're not fixing your career at that level forever. I'm an example of someone. I started in the public sector, for goodness sake, and I've ended up in the city. I'm not saying that's easy to do, but it's possible. I'm an example of that. The other thing I'd say, just to harken back to something that BJ said earlier, there's an old quote from Lee Trevino, the golfer, who said, "Funny thing is, the more I practice, the luckier I get."
I'm first of all conscious that this might be the longest some of these guys have gone without a drink. And I'm talking to myself in that as well. So thank you very much. There's so much more we could talk about. We could be here forever, but we won't be. I'm conscious that everyone wants to get to their not fortune cookies, future cookies. Last reminder, tune in Mondays, 3 o'clock ITV, and ITV1+1, and please, round of applause for these guys. Late, so then he gets the bar first. Thanks.
Ladies first.